is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's fired. He throws. It is.
March 1st, 1976, and for the 22nd time, Muhammad Ali is on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He would go on to be on it another 18 times, 40 total, second most all-time to Michael Jordan. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Past Star Prime podcast, the show that uses old issues of Sports Illustrated each week to look back on what was going on in the world of sports 50 years ago. And we have certainly had our fill of Muhammad Ali in the 2 years of doing this show, haven't we, Bill and Mark, as they join me again for another rousing edition of Pop.
What have had 8 shows or 8 magazines with him on them?
I was going to say, if you had to guess, how many do you think, since we started doing this in January of 24, has Ali been on?
I'm going to say 8. I'm guessing. It seems like we're doing him every other week.
This will be his 7th, okay?
Holy smokes.
4 times in 74, which I think was the most he was on for 1 year. That was also the year he was the Sportsman of the Year. Twice in 75, and I believe this is the only time he will be on the cover this year. March 1st, he fought Frazier twice, winning both times, including the Thriller in Manila. He fought Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle and won that fight. And like I said, was on Sportsman of the Year in 74. So there was a reason why he was on the cover a bunch in 74. But anything jump out about any of the discussions we've had about Muhammad in the half dozen shows we've already done on him?
I'm going to talk about how he helped and became a good friend to Nancy Lieberman. I know it goes against his boxing, but the advice he gave her as a young player, and the fact they became so close and she was sort of his go-to guy or go-to gal at the end, just left a real impression on me.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and of course, mentioned he was the Sportsman of the Year in 74, and we had Nancy on to talk about that. And you can tell that even though he's been gone for almost 10 years now, that he had quite an impact on her life then and still.
Old school tales, new school fire. The scorecard set, we'll take it higher.
So lots of talk right now as we get ready for the baseball season that this is going to be the last ever baseball season. We're looking at the lockout of all lockouts. But as we look at the scorecard, Mark, there were some labor problems going on half a century ago.
Oh, yeah. The spring training was in jeopardy. The season was in jeopardy in 1976. But the players at that time were actually willing to play without a contract, which, I don't know what would happen today. But the owners had finally, I think, relinquished the reserve clause, to try and make it. It sounded like back then it was a little bit, there wasn't the animosity that we have today. So none of the season got canceled. Some of the exhibition season or spring training got delayed. But, the labor deal was finalized not until July. It was called the Sites decision because it established free agency for players that had 6 or more years of major league service. And it abolished the reserve clause. So basically, it made free agents Andy Messersmith and Dave McNally. It was a 4-year deal. Teams losing a player did get compensated with draft picks, but it just changed the whole structure of the game. And there was a lockout in the spring, but like I say, it didn't affect the season, and it wasn't until 81 that the season would get affected.
Worst summer of my life.
That's when you're a kid though, because baseball was my only real huge outlet. So you take it away and you're like, doggone, I have nothing.
Do you
Oh,
remember in '81? Was it they finally reached an agreement? So they played the All-Star game like on July 31st, and then started the second half of the
Yeah,
season
right.
on August 1st. A completely new season. It was like so there were two separate seasons, and the champions of each division would
Isn't
meet
that the
in
one
the
the Reds
playoffs.
were upset because they had like the best record? They
No, it
did
was the Montreal Expos, had the best record in
Expos.
baseball, and didn't make the
I thought
playoffs.
that was 94.
no,
But
that was 94 for
yeah,
Montreal.
yeah, 94 for
Oh,
Montreal.
94. Okay, maybe
In,
you're right.
in
I
Maybe
thought
it was.
81, the Reds had like the best
Okay.
record. The Dodgers
Okay.
made the playoffs and everyone was upset.
Yeah,
I
so
think it was the Washington Nationals back then.
Dodgers and I think maybe Houston. I think they both won one of the halves,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
Cincinnati came in second in both halves. They actually, yeah, and they had the
Had
best
more, they
record
had
in
more
all of
wins.
baseball and
Yeah.
did make
Yeah.
playoffs.
Everyone was up in arms over that.
Yeah,
Oh,
my Tigers finished second in the second half of the NL East, losing out to Milwaukee. So I had a glimmer of hope back then.
Yeah. The Angels stunk.
my A's made the playoffs. Billy Martin.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Billy Ball.
Hey, '82, the Angels were real good.
They were. They were until they decided to go to Louis Sanchez instead of Andy Hassler.
Yeah.
Smart move.
Good thing you don't hold a grudge.
I don't remember it at all.
Bill, I've never been able to see anything basically my entire life, and that seemed to be the case here with what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, I'm going to go from baseball to basketball. This is a Delaware high school game, just two teams, Tower Hill versus Wilmington Friends, because they're all pals. And this is the one story, they don't actually mention this kid's name, but a kid player loses his contact lens during a tense moment. I've never worn contact lenses, so I don't know that feeling. Scott, you could talk to us about it because I think you have worn lenses or wear them. But they stop the game. Everyone gets on their hands and knees searching. The crowd goes silent. Then all of a sudden, a small, find that contact. And then the cheers get louder. Find that contact. Well, they did find the contact. Where'd they find it? In the corner of the player's eye. And then the play just resumed and everything went on.
Oh,
Yeah. Has that happened to you, Scott?
I've never worn contact
Oh,
lenses.
you haven't? I thought you
Oh,
did.
no. Nope. I started wearing glasses when I was 5. Actually, I have what's called astigmatism, and
Yeah.
which basically means your eye is not perfectly round; it's more flat in the front,
Okay.
and so I can't wear contacts. So,
Ooh,
yeah,
I had a hard
I
time
wouldn't
with.
know what to say if I saw you in contacts. I may not recognize you.
right, exactly.
I wore contacts for a year, and back then I wore the hard ones, and they just caused me so much problems. My eyes were always red; they
Yeah.
hurt like hell. So finally, and then ironically, I went to the eye doctor, and it turns out my eyes corrected themselves. So I went
Really,
from having to wear
really?
these. Yeah. So for about 23 years, I went without having to wear glasses. My eyes were perfect. And then Caitlin was born. With a year of that, all of a sudden I couldn't see again.
They didn't say much this week, Mark.
Oh, but they said a lot, actually. Rich Gossage of the Chicago White Sox on the possibility that team might wear shorts in the 1976 season, which they did, the only year they wore shorts. He says, I don't have bad looking legs.
Yeah,
Never seen him.
that was one of Bill Veck's
Yep.
many
They got to
Yes,
bring
it
that
is.
back.
And you know what? I would wear sweats under those shorts if I had to play
Yeah.
because my legs, maybe it's because of my age, my legs, nah.
You're 30.
Yeah, I know I'm 30, but
Yeah.
Caitlin will say to me, Dad, those legs.
But I was digging through I'm starting to pare down some of my sports stuff. I found an autographed rookie Rich Gossage card the other day.
nice.
I didn't even know I had it.
One nighter in San Juan, about 1,000 proud Belgian fans stormed into San Juan believing their Lion of Flanders would roar. But when Jean-Pierre Coopman went down, they cried, grabbed Cuban sandwiches and beer, and quietly wondered what this meant back home. Bill, tell me about this Coopman guy.
Well, Koopman, this story alone, we talk about Chuck Wepner as being the sort of basis of the Rocky movie. Jean-Pierre Koopman, in my eyes, is closer. Koopman had never fought a named fighter before or after Muhammad Ali. He came into the fight, he was outweighed by 20 pounds, he was 3 inches shorter, and he had a 5-inch reach disadvantage. So in every way, he could have been the Rocky character fighting Apollo Creed, Apollo Creed being Muhammad Ali. That didn't happen. He got dumped in the 5th round.
Yeah, long before the first punch, it was clear this night wasn't really about Koopman. It was about the guy on the cover, Muhammad Ali, who by 1976 had become less a fighter and more just like a global phenomenon, a one-man traveling theater. He was fighting Mark like every 2 months back then.
He was, in fact, after this fight, he was going to fight Jimmy Young in late April for $1.5 million. And the plan was him to fight every 2 months because of a couple of reasons. One, he needed the money, and the other one, he wanted to take a show to as many people as possible. Because he was a man of the people and stuff like that. So that's why he was fighting so much. But what I found really interesting in the same article, Angela Dundee has this little list where he says the view of the best of the rest, the other heavyweight fighters. And like he has Ken Norton number one. But what I found really interesting, in number 10 on that list is a 24-year-old Larry Holmes, who was the one that essentially ended Ali's career in that last fight where he tried to take it easy on him because he was just punishing him too much. And, Ali was a shell of himself for that fight.
Yeah, Billy, that was quite a list of future opponents that Angelo saw as possibilities for the great one.
Yeah, this is a different time, but between 1973 and 1977, Ali faced all of these guys on Mark's list he mentioned: Norton, Frazier, Foreman, Lyle, Shavers, Bugner, and Wepner. And the one guy he didn't fight, what was it? Dwayne Bobick. Did you find the guy's first name for me, Scott? It was Dwayne Bobick?
Yeah, it is Dwayne.
It's the only guy that he didn't fight, and he beat every one of them except Ken Norton, who beat him the first time. So he was basically 10-1 against these guys. And that's amazing in that time because you fought the number one, number two people. Nowadays in boxing, or at least by the time that we were watching it, a lot of the fights weren't always that good. There may have been a tomato can involved, but not with Muhammad Ali. He seemed to always want to face the top guys.
Right. What's interesting in his analysis of Larry Holmes, the one guy that did beat him, was that he said that Holmes apparently lost to Dwayne Bobick in the 72 Olympic tryouts, which I found fascinating because look at how their two careers diverged. And he called him a good boxer, a good puncher, but he has not taken punishment yet.
And the crazy thing with Larry Holmes, his career came full circle because he dominated Muhammad Ali and basically made him look bad in his last fight. Then remember when Holmes fought Mike Tyson?
Yep.
Same thing. And Mike Tyson straight right over the top. And that was it. Goodbye. Yep. But back to Koopman for a sec, just so you guys are not worried about him. He went back home and got his job back restoring medieval cathedrals at $4.50 an hour.
Wow, that's great.
Damn. I mean, but I'm saying it just shows you guys like him to get that opportunity. Man, impressive.
Yeah, so Ali is fighting in Zaire and the Philippines, and now he's in Puerto Rico. So he really is taking his show globally, and really an ambassador, not just for himself, but for the sport of boxing. After stopping Koopman, he was almost apologetic. He admitted that he hated hurting a decent man, but needed the money and the stage, promising more fights around the world because he knew his time was finite and he intended to, quote, raise some hell while he could. And he definitely was a hellraiser, the great Muhammad Ali.
And now on the Pop Podcast is someone who knows quite a bit about Muhammad Ali and his impact both in and out of the ring. From Washington University in St. Louis, Professor Gerald Early, author of many books, including, this one sounds great, Play Harder, The Triumph of Black Baseball in America, and the editor of a sweeping anthology on Muhammad Ali, bringing together voices like Norman Mailer, Ishmael Reed, and Hunter S. Thompson to examine Ali's career, his larger-than-life persona, and his profound cultural impact, called The Muhammad Ali Reader. From what I am told, if you want to know a little bit about everything there is to know about Ali, this is the book to get, and Professor Early edited all of that. So that's the introduction. I often said, Professor Early, if I went through your whole resume, I'd go about 40 minutes and then I'd say, hey, thanks, nice talking to you. So we'll stop there. But Professor Early, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule and joining us on the Past Our Prime podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's March of 1976, going back in time. And for the 18th time, Muhammad Ali is on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Despite the fact that his career is kind of now on the slow downside, he would go on to be on the cover of SI an astonishing 22 more times. That in and of itself shows the impact that he had on our culture, does it not, Professor Early?
No question about it that he was uh, the most impactful athlete, most famous athlete, wound up becoming really one of the most famous people in the world. The only person I think was comparable after him would be Michael Jordan. Ali was just in another realm.
The only person to be on the cover of SI more than Muhammad Ali is Ernest Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
So tell us, it's like I mentioned, it's 1976. It's about 12 years since Cassius Clay came onto the scene. What changed between 1964 and 1976? The brash young champion of 64, and now we're kind of seeing a more measured figure here in 1976.
Well, Ali by 1976, he's 30, about 34 years old. He is he's starting to wind down as a fighter. His best days are behind him as a fighter, although he will have some important fights coming up in 76 and 77 and 78. His best days as a fighter are behind him. He has gone through the banishment from boxing that he endured for 3.5 years. He has won the Supreme Court decision when he opposed the draft. He wound up winning the decision. So Ali is now, at the top of the world because he's won. He got his title back against George Foreman in 74. He beat Joe Frazier again in the Thriller in Manila 75. So he's accomplished everything that he could accomplish in the ring. I mean, he's beaten his nemesis. He has accomplished what he wanted to in the ring. He is staying around. He's doing what many great athletes do. He's staying around too long. His encore is too long, and that's the big problem with him. Personally, or on another angle with him, by 1976, the Nation of Islam that he had belonged to split, and it split into two different religious communities. The Nation of Islam remained with Louis Farrakhan running the Nation of Islam. And then Elijah Muhammad's son, Wallace D. Muhammad, took over and formed a new group, the World Community of Islam. And that's the group that Ali joined, which was a less racial group than the Nation of Islam. This changed his perspective as well when he switched Muslim communities and he joined Wallace D. Muhammad's community. So he's matured. So that's another sign of his maturing. And changing and engaging Islam, which he feels he's engaging Islam in a deeper way than he had been engaging it before.
Talking about that, how central was Ali's faith to who he was versus how he wanted to be seen?
Ali's faith was very important. First of all, because I think Ali felt that he paid a price for his faith by the attacks that were made against him back in the 60s, plus that he lost his title, which he feels basically he lost his title because he had joined the Nation of Islam, and that was and people didn't like the fact that he joined the Nation of Islam, and they saw it as this highly racialist group and all this sort of stuff. So I think he was very serious about his religion. But I think as he got older and he traveled around the world and he met a lot of different kind of people, he met a lot of Muslims because of the traveling he did around the world, so forth. I think he matured in his view about the religion. And as a result, I think that when the group split, I think he felt just more comfortable going with the other group that was more interested in aligning itself with Islam more broadly, global Islam, I guess you might call it, or something like that. But I think the thing that people need to more appreciate about Ali was that he was a man of considerable faith. He took his faith very seriously. He may not have always followed all the tenets of his faith, but then most people don't. But he took his faith very seriously. But he took his faith very seriously.
Yeah, I was going to go someplace else. I'm going to go back just a sec. We have done a lot of shows, obviously 7 of them with Ali on the cover.
Mm.
And we have done everything under the sun about his boxing career. But if you just now strip away the boxing and strip away all the pomp and circumstance that he brought, what was Muhammad Ali like as a man?
I would say that Muhammad Ali as a man um, was very gregarious. I think he liked people. I think that was one of the key things about Ali is he liked people. He liked meeting people. He liked being around people. He enjoyed, I think there's something that a lot of people don't know about. He enjoyed doing magic tricks. And he would do these magic tricks. And then he would say, I'll tell you how I did it because it's against my faith to deceive anybody. So I'll tell you how I did it. And yeah, I met him one time and he said that to me. And I said, well, that's against the magician's code for you to tell people how you did it. So I just thought that was funny. But he, once again, it's a sign of he took his religion seriously and said, I'll tell you how I did it because it's against my religion to deceive people. He was very self-aware. He knew how famous he was. He knew how much he meant to people. When I met him, it was in Ohio at a conference about Muhammad Ali, and he showed up at the conference, and a ton of people came. Once they found out Muhammad Ali was there, a ton of people showed up at this conference. And so everybody wanted autographs. And so he would sit down and just sign autographs on and on and on and on and on. If you came up to him and you didn't have anything to sign, he had a little attache case with him. He would take out a card or something and sign it for you. So no one left without his autograph if you wanted his autograph. And I just thought that was enormously generous of him. And so I asked him, and he said, why he was so accommodating to people like this, and just spent all this time signing autographs. And he said, it means a lot to people to meet me. And so, I want to respect that because it means a lot to people to meet me. And I was actually rather I was kind of touched by his saying that. But I think Ali was I mean he had his his flaws. He could be some of the things that he said probably were he shouldn't have said, especially some of the things he said about some of his opponents. He could be at times he could act kind of immature at times. But I think as he got older, he got more mature. And, you also have to understand that he became very famous when he was very young. That's hard for people to deal with being that famous when you're as young as he was when he won the title. But I think that Ali was just one of these very generous personalities. I think people liked him. And the other thing about Ali that I think is really important, which I think won him a lot of fans and everything, even people who didn't agree with his racial views, was that he was humorous. He could really be very funny, and I think people appreciated that. And sometimes he could be funny about some of the things he was saying politically or racially, which I think even when people didn't agree with him, they kind of it disarmed them. It kind of made them. It kind of made people like him, I think is the word. Even if they may not have liked some of his views, I think they kind of liked him. And so those would be the things I would say about him, outside the ring as a personality, as a man. He was somebody I think a lot of people looked up to in the black community particularly, but even among white people, people looked up to him. And he was extremely likable.
I've told my co-host this story many times. When I was really little, I loved to go home and read the encyclopedias for some reason. And I remember reading about the boxing champions of the 60s, and it would be Cassius Clay, Cassius Clay, Cassius Clay. And then all of a sudden it was Muhammad Ali, Muhammad Ali, Muhammad Ali. And I'd go, what happened to Cassius Clay? So when he decides to change his name because of his faith, what was the reaction to the community in general, and how did he deal with that?
At first, the Nation of Islam was not a very well understood group, and the tendency was to see them as a hate group. They really were. They were not a hate group. They were a faith community. They weren't a hate group. The first thing I think was that people misunderstood back in '64 and everything, and kind of thought he had joined something like the KKK or something, and they misunderstood the nature of the group. The group was never anything like that. Um, so it was just a thing of people didn't quite understand what Islam was. People have been more exposed to it now because of the number of immigrants we have and stuff like that. People are a little more knowledgeable about Islam. Um, so I think that he felt very much put upon initially because of his faith and because the sports writers who were covering him, most of whom were white, didn't understand it. They knew very little about Islam. They knew hardly anything about the Nation of Islam. You know, they heard of Malcolm X. They said, "Oh, Malcolm X, this militant black guy who's coming out saying all this stuff," and so forth. And so I think he felt very put upon at first and very defensive at first about his religion. Um, but once again, there was qualities about Ali that eventually won people over because at first no one would use when he got the Muslim name, no one would use it. I mean, the major papers and stuff like no, everybody was still calling him Cassius Clay. Even some of his opponents were calling him Cassius Clay. His name is Cassius Clay. I think Floyd Patterson did that. I think Ernie Terrell did that. His name is Cassius Clay. I think Ernie Terrell must have done that because when he fought Ernie Terrell, he kept hitting Ernie Terrell. Said, "What's my name? What's my name?" So Ernie Terrell must have done that. Must have been calling him Cassius Clay. But I think eventually, as time went along, more and more the press, the New York Times, and other publications began to respect him because I think after a time, people began to respect his commitment to his religion. I think that particularly was so when he stood up against with the draft. People may not have liked his standing up with the draft, but I think they respected his willingness to take whatever punishment he was going to take for standing up to the draft and opposing the war. And I think people respected that. Plus, as he himself said, he said, then a lot of the public turned against the war, so I picked the right war to be against.
Well, interesting. That was going to be my next question. So Ali loses like the prime years of his life because of his stance on the Vietnam War. How did that change his legacy in terms of the stand that he took?
Well, um, it fits. the The thing about his doing that is that because the country turned was the opinion in the country turned so much against the war, and that the war ended the way it did. I mean, the war ended. I mean, God, us leaving Saigon and people hanging off helicopters to get the hell out of Saigon, and I mean, the ending of that war was probably one of the low points for the United States. I mean, it was if talking about cutting and running, I mean, and that's more or less what we did. The war was such a tragedy and such a disaster for us as it turned out that I think Ali standing against it over time as things went along, as we went into the '70s and as the war was seen to be a mistake. I mean, people, whether you were on the right or the left, I think most people thought it was a mistake. At least how it was executed was a mistake. That I think Ali began to rise in stature because people thought of him as a man with some kind of principle in standing up to the war. I think people respect somebody who they feel, if you're taking a principled stand about something, even if they don't exactly agree with the stand that you're taking, that you seem principled about the stand that you're taking. And so I think that affected Ali very much insofar as his stature went over time. The other thing was, of course, that Ali stood against the draft. And by 1973, lo and behold, country didn't have a draft anymore.
But I was going to say that the first year when he made this decision in 1967, though, had to be really tough because it was a year before the Tet Offensive that kind of changed people's opinion of the Vietnam War. So that first year had to have been rough on him because that's when they wanted to take him to trial. And public opinion, I think, initially was, what is he doing?
Oh yeah, initially it was when he first did this, it was very very bad. I mean, all the boxing associations and everything took. He lost his boxing license. He couldn't fight anywhere. He was persona non grata. I mean, he was really, really totally ostracized. He was like an exile almost in his own country. He was exiled from his sport. He couldn't, he really couldn't do anything. I mean, it was very bad. He didn't have any money. And so that's when he started going around on college campuses giving speeches because he didn't have any money. And so it was, yeah, initially, the initial response to it, Ali was almost like, almost seeing almost like he was a traitor because he wasn't supporting the war. And that was, uh, but the attitude about the war changed, and so that's what changed with Ali was the attitude about the war. Plus the fact that a lot of people thought, even though he was against the war, um, he should still have been able to pursue his profession, even when he got convicted and he was out on appeal. People thought, oh, gee, that's kind of wrong to not deny the guy being able to pursue his profession. And So I think he got some sympathy that way, even from people who may not have agreed with his stance on the draft. Is that, wow, you know, let the guy make a living for God's sake.
Do you think Ali, prior to making the decision to not go to Vietnam or not do the draft, do you think that he fully understood the magnitude of what he was risking when he made that stand?
That's a good question because some other people I talked to, like Bob Lipsyte and some other sports writers, they're not entirely convinced that he was fully aware of exactly what he was doing, or what how can I put this, what bear he was poking when he was doing this. He wasn't fully aware. He was somewhat aware, but not fully aware. Um, and so that may be true. Um, I do think that he was aware that he was doing something serious, and he wanted to be taken seriously. And I think the big fear was at first that maybe he wasn't fully aware, or didn't understand fully what he was doing. And that's when several black athletes, including Jim Brown and some others, met with him. And they met with him because they wanted to know, hey, dude, do you kind of know what you're doing? Like, do you understand fully what you're doing, dude? And are you sincere? Because some people think, oh, maybe this guy, because he had this persona with the poetry and all this other kind of stuff. This persona of maybe not being taken quite seriously, or maybe this guy is just like performing, and so maybe like maybe this you know I maybe this guy is not really being sincere, and he doesn't understand that this is something political and this could really screw him up. So they met with him, and Jim Brown and Bob Russell and so forth. They met with him, and Russell comes out and says, "Yeah, he's sincere. He's sincere." I don't know if I necessarily agree with him or not. Bill Russell, I said Bob Russell. I said Bill Russell. I've got names confused. Bill Russell. So Russell says, "Yeah, he's sincere." Jim Brown says he's sincere, and we respect him for that because he's sincere about what he's doing. And I think that that was important to have convinced those people that he was sincere. But it also indicated that there were a number of people who didn't think he was sincere, or thought, oh man, this is just some dumb kid who's being misled by these people around him, and he doesn't know what the heck he's doing. And so he convinced them that he was sincere.
So in that way, yeah, I was reading something a while back, was asking, was Ali brave to make that decision, or was he just stubborn? What do you think?
He, I think it might be a little bit of both, because remember that he made this decision only a couple of years after he joined the Nation of Islam. So he's a new convert to this religion. He's opposing going to the war, not for political reasons. He's opposing it for religious reasons. He's saying, I can't do this because my faith does not permit me to do this. So he's basically a new convert to this religion. When people tend to be new converts to something, they're very zealous and they're very loyal to it because they want to show people, they want to show the community that they're in. I'm sincere. I really believe this, and I'm really, and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that Ali was being partly stubborn by doing it to want to show that he was a true member of the faith and he was willing to do this. But I also think he wanted to show the people of his faith. I think he wanted to be brave, and I think he wanted to show them, look, I believe in the faith and I'm willing to sacrifice for this. If they send me to jail, I'll go to jail. I want to show you people that I really believe. I believe this. I believe Elijah Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. I believe this religion, and I'm willing to sacrifice to believe. And so, yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. I think he was stubborn about it, particularly because when he ran into people trying to talk him out of it, like Sugar Ray Robinson and people like that, who say, "Oh man, what are you doing? Are you nuts? Just go into the army." I mean, look. You can make a deal with the army. You go in there, they'll have you going around doing exhibitions and everything, like with Joe Louis, and nobody's going to put you on the front line in Vietnam. Are you nuts? No, they're not going to do that. And so he got impatient with people like that, who he felt didn't understand how seriously he took his religion. He said Sugar Ray Robinson doesn't understand this.
We are talking with Professor Gerald Early from Washington University in St. Louis, the editor of the Muhammad Ali Reader, which is a collection of essays on everything there is to know about Muhammad Ali. And that's the layman's way of saying that he's our expert when it comes to the greatest, Muhammad Ali. We talked a little bit about his humor, and I always think that a man's humor is really a look inside to their intellect. And that's one thing I think that gets overlooked, is how smart Muhammad Ali was. When you talk about his humor, how do you interpret it? You mentioned a little bit about performance art. Was it deflection? Was it a strategy? A little bit of all above for him?
I think it was partly a strategy, partly um, a way of disarming people, a way of making himself not seem as terrible as people may have thought, and stuff like that. I think the humor took some of the bite away from some of the things he was saying. I mean, he would say some things in interviews and he would kind of laugh or joke about, smile about it and everything. And, about the white man being a devil and stuff like that. But he would say some of the stuff he would say with deadly earnest. But some of the stuff he would say with a kind of twinkle and a smile, and he would joke. And that made the stuff about the white man as the devil, that kind of made it was like the sugar when you're taking medicine, that song of Mary Poppins.
Spoonful of sugar.
Right. So it was kind
Yeah.
of letting the stuff go down. And so people, I think, were more accepting of it because of the humor that he had. I mean, he was really a very, very funny guy in a lot of ways. I mean, he had been funny even before he got into the Nation of Islam with the poetry and everything. I mean, he understood performance. I mean, he understood, look, my job is to try to get fannies in the seats, to come see these fights. And, if I adopt some kind of personality or something, that's going to help get fannies in the seats. So, he's trying to get people to come. And so he's doing the poetry and the other kinds of things that he's doing. So he had been humorous and funny even before he joined the Nation of Islam. And even though after he joined the nation, he took on more of a air of being serious, he still was at times funny. And that always made him that always endeared him to people to some degree, the fact that he was funny. So I think it was partly performance. I think it was also partly that's just the way he was as a person. I just think he was that way. And he was pretty quick-witted. I mean, he wasn't a guy. I mean, he wasn't a very well-educated guy or something. He got out of school and, I mean, he said, basically he graduated from school with a D average or something like that. I mean, he got out of school as the principal as a favor or something. But he was very quick-witted, and he could think well on his feet. And those things I think helped him a lot because he was interviewed so much. How well he was able to deal with being interviewed by people, whether the people were hostile to him or whether they weren't hostile to him, he handled being interviewed very well.
We mentioned that he came to be beloved by most of the United States. There was a faction and a portion of the population that it took a while to warm up. But globally, he resonated beyond the United States pretty much right away. What made him so popular around the world?
Well, a couple of things. One, he had this kind of larger than life personality, and I think people just kind of gravitated to that. Second, he was a Muslim, and it turns out there are a lot of Muslims in the world. And he was a famous Muslim. He was the most famous Muslim in the Western world. And so he was carrying the faith in the Western world, and so that attracted him, especially with third world people, in Africa and Asia. The fact that he was a Muslim counted for a lot, and so that was helpful too. That he was part of this particular faith community, being a Muslim. Plus, he was a boxer. Boxing, even though people may dislike the sport or something, boxing is an international sport. I mean, you find boxers all over the globe. I mean, in all countries, it's an Olympic sport now, even with women in the sport. So boxing has a high international profile. That's another reason why he would attract a lot of people, especially at the time he was boxing, and boxing was still a very popular sport. The fact that it's a very international sport. That's one of the reasons why he was able to go and fight in foreign countries as his name got bigger, because boxing is an international sport.
What do you think Muhammad Ali's greatest achievement was? Which I know there's so many to list, but I mean, is it in the ring, out of the ring? Is there one thing that stands out to you?
Well, in the ring, I think his greatest achievement was winning his title back from George Foreman in a fight that people thought he wasn't going to win. And I think that his other great achievement in the ring was when he beat Joe Frazier in the Thriller in Manila, because I thought that was a pure act of will, because it was a fight that both men had taken so much out of each other. I thought it was pure will that he wound up winning. When you see an athlete do that, winning on pure will, you admire that, because it's just something to see. Out of the ring, I would say that his greatest achievement was that he spoke up for himself, and he pretty much kind of created his own personality, and sold himself the way he wanted to be sold. And I have enormous respect for that. I don't always agree with everything he said or every way he presented himself to the public, but I really admire the fact that he sold himself to the public the way he wanted to be sold. He had control over himself in that way. I admire that.
If you had to do sort of a Mount Rushmore of like the greatest, African American athletes that have affected the sports world, obviously Ali would be on that Mount Rushmore, but who would join him there?
For me, I would say Ali, Jackie Robinson, Ali, Jackie Robinson, Jim Brown, Wilma Rudolph.
Mm.
I'd go see that.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean,
Yeah.
There's so many, but you put me on the spot like that.
Yeah, I
would
know.
say those four. I mean,
it's hard because you got Rayford Johnson and Arthur Ashe, and
yeah, I know. There's so many.
who else? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, it's just
Yeah, Serena Williams. I mean,
right.
Bill Russell. I mean, it's a bunch. But those, if you pressing me for just four,
Yeah.
that I really those, at least today,
Yeah.
those would be my four.
Questions fly, lightning strikes as answers try.
asking you a question about Muhammad Ali, I mean, it's going to be like I'm putting my money on you getting these right. But here's your question, okay? True or false? Muhammad Ali actually has won 2 Grammy Awards, or was nominated, I should say, for 2 Grammy Awards.
I think that's true.
It is true. He was nominated. It's the spoken language one.
Right.
I think he did one called "I Am the Greatest" and "The Adventures of Ali and His Gang versus Mr. Toothpick."
Right. I remember. The latter one. I remember that very well. Yeah. Yeah. So.
So, Professor, I'm going to go way back on this one because I want to do a little comparison. Is there a comparison between what Joe Louis went through, Brown Bomber, and Muhammad Ali? And could Ali have existed without Joe Louis paving the way?
To your second question, the answer is no. Ali could not have existed without Joe Louis paving the way. Joe Louis, yeah, I mean, Joe Louis, another one of these guys who could be on this Mount Rushmore you guys were asking me about. Because I didn't think of him at the time, but Joe is Joe was quite a figure. Joe was an enormous figure of his time, and no, I think number one, Ali needed Joe as a kind of foil or as a kind of something to say, "Oh, I'm not this," I'm going. Needed Joe's greatness because Joe Louis set this benchmark for greatness as a heavyweight champion, and Ali in his early days measured himself totally against Joe Louis. They would ask him questions. Could you beat Joe? Oh yeah, I could beat Joe Louis. Joe Louis coming with that slow style and all that kind of stuff. I can beat Joe Louis and everything. So Ali understood that in his profession, Joe Louis was the epitome of greatness, and he kind of felt that I got to get out of Joe Louis's shadow. And I think a lot of what he was thinking about as a fighter was, I want to be greater than Joe Louis, and so I would say that Joe Louis opened the door. He opened the door for black athletes generally in the 20th century. I mean, he opened the door for Jackie Robinson. Joe Louis was the dude. I mean, Joe Louis really did. Enough can't be said about Joe Louis. Unfortunately, my students and everything, they never heard of Joe Louis. It's very unfortunate. It's unfortunate, I mean, if you talk about Joe Louis, I might as well be talking about somebody back in the Jurassic age. But Joe Louis also stood up against segregation. Joe Louis set a standard for fighting. And Joe Louis, remember, he had a challenge. Joe Louis's challenge was that he was in a much more segregated time. Most of his opponents were white. Unlike Muhammad Ali, most of Ali's opponents were black, but most of Joe Louis's opponents were white. And so this was another kind of thing where Joe Louis became a national hero, a hero for whites as well as blacks, fighting mostly whites. That is an achievement. At the time that he did it, that is an achievement.
So is it safe to say that Joe Louis reassured white America and Ali confronted white America?
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. I mean, Joe Louis did that. I mean, he fought in World War II and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he did that. But Joe Louis was not an Uncle Tom. I mean, Joe Louis was somebody who really had a lot of pride in his race and really saw himself as representing his race in a positive way. I think Ali also saw himself as representing his race and representing his race in a positive way. He was more militant about it, and I guess at times maybe more confrontational about it in some respects. But both men, I think, saw themselves as what they were doing meant to bring a certain kind of racial pride to their people with what they were doing. And so, but yeah, I mean, I guess the distinction that you made is I would go along with that. I mean, it works to a degree, the distinction that you made.
Now, Professor Early, I'm going to get a little personal here. In 64, Cassius Clay wins, and you're, what are you, 10, 11 years old?
Yeah, about 11, 12 years old.
Okay, so then 76, you're in your mid-20s. He's beating this Jean-Pierre Coopman guy. But he's you basically lived his entire career. What was he like to you as a child, as a young man growing up?
Well, as a child, I liked him because he was flamboyant, because of the style of boxing that he had. His style just was, because his style, you would no boxing trainer would ever teach a boxer to fight like that. That the way Ali fought in his, you just wouldn't do that. Just say, oh man, he's breaking all the rules. You don't go out and fight like that. But it was very telegenic, the whole way not only the style that he fought, but just his personality. He was just something so fresh and so different. When I was a kid, I was just mesmerized by him because he was just so different. And he was young, he was good looking. He's like a movie. I mean, to me, he was the closest thing to a black movie star. So yeah, I mean, as a kid, he was just. I just thought. As a kid, I probably thought he was the closest thing I ever come to being like Superman or something. I mean, he was just a larger than life person to me. If somebody told me as a kid that he could jump off a roof and fly, I would half believe it. So yeah, so I followed his career very closely and was very impressed by what he did. I was impressed by his stance against the war, against the draft, because, people had lost faith in the war. This wasn't World War II. I mean, people had lost faith in the war. People didn't quite understand why we were fighting the war. And so it was, he seemed like he was standing up for black people and showing black people that you could assert yourself and you could be a certain kind of way. And all those things when I was a young man, all those things were very impressive to me. As he got older in his career, by the time you get to the 70s, after 75, after the Frazier fight, my concern at that point, I said, I kept thinking all the time with each fight, quit. I said, you're staying too long. Quit, 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 quit. His speech started getting slurred. He's taking more punishment in the ring. When he got old, he's taking a lot more punishment in the ring. Those fights he had, against Ernie Shavers and against Ken Norton, those later fights, he's taking a lot of punishment in the ring. I said, man, you need to quit. So then it was a lot of anxiety on my part as a fan following him over his career that I thought he was staying too long. He was doing the mistake that a lot of great athletes, he's staying too long.
And then you mentioned briefly, you got to meet him. What's it like? What was that like for you?
Oh, that was great meeting him, because he came to this conference that was being held about him. And this was after he had retired. And he came with a friend of his named Howard Bingham, who was a photographer. And so he and Howard Bingham came. He didn't have any big entourage or anything like that. It was just him and Howard Bingham. And so it was great. I mean, it was an academic conference, which is kind of funny because he came to an academic conference, so there are people reading papers about him, academic papers, and he sat there and he listened to us. Oh my God, he's doing something that even I find hard to do, is sit around listening to a whole bunch of academic papers. And I am an academic. So. I mean, and so I asked him about that afterwards. I said, why'd you stay around and listen to all these papers about you? He said, he said, it was a real honor to have, all you smart people talking about me. So I thought that was funny. But it was great to meet him. The conference was a couple of days and he spent the whole time there. And it was great to meet him. And he was just so open about things. At this time, he couldn't speak that well, but he was still speaking, but couldn't speak that well. But he was very open and everything, and very generous with his time. He was very, very, very nice man.
Bill will tell you that we've been in locker rooms, for many, many, many things, and nothing, gets their attention. But one time, Muhammad Ali came into a locker room at a baseball, and like they all just kind of shut up. It was like standing at attention for royalty and stuff. He had that presence,
He had a presence.
and he wasn't speaking at all at that time.
Yeah.
So he really was a great, great man. Hey, Professor Early, this has been outstanding. Your perspective
Yes.
on the legacy of Muhammad goes way beyond the squared circle. So we're grateful for your time and insight. Thank you so much for joining us on the Pastor Prime podcast.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking about Ali.
Hey, next time we'll talk our
Great.
first love, okay? Baseball.
That sounds good. That sounds fun.
Great.
Go
Thank you.
Cardinals.
Thank
Okay.
you, Professor.
Thank you, Professor. You're the best.
Take care now.
Rookie cards of baseball, basketball, and football stars are iconic pieces of American history, and they have been outstanding investments over the last 50 years. Now, key issues of Sports Illustrated, professionally graded and encapsulated by CGC, have emerged as an exciting alternative to trading cards. ThePit.com is the leading online exchange for investment-grade sports magazines. General Manager Mark Humphreys offers Sports Illustrated first cover editions featuring stars like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Derek Jeter, Ken Griffey Jr., and so many more. And Mark Humphreys is here now to talk about the great Muhammad Ali on the cover of SI 40 times, second most ever, as we mentioned, to Michael Jordan. This was his 18th time on the cover. Mark, tell us a bit about this issue with Muhammad Ali on the cover.
Well, Scott, this was Muhammad Ali defeating Jean-Pierre Coopman, a Belgian fighter. It was a fifth-round knockout. This was really in the decline phase of Ali's career, at least the way I think of it. His greatest fights were behind him. And based on the little research I did, they were looking for a easy opponent after all the brutality and the wear of the three Frazier fights, the Foreman fight, the Rumble in the Jungle. And of course, Ali was no longer a young man at this point, no longer a young boxer, certainly. So in terms of the collectability, it is a collectible cover because it's Muhammad Ali, and because there are people now who are collecting all the Muhammad Ali covers. But this particular issue, for the reasons I've just mentioned, summarized as this was not a very significant fight in the grand scheme of things for Muhammad Ali. This appeals to collectors who want to collect all 40 Muhammad Ali covers. And there are a number of those people, and I think there are going to be a lot more, because for Muhammad Ali, if you want to collect widely distributed items, there aren't a lot of choices. Now, if you're a millionaire or billionaire, you can think about collecting, gloves that were used in one of his famous fights, or a robe, personal items that are autographed and so forth. But most sports collectibles is around the trading card. And Muhammad Ali doesn't have a lot of trading cards because there were no sets of boxers that were produced in the United States during his reign, during his career. There had been earlier sets when boxing was even more popular. Topps produced a ringside set in the 1950s. But as a result, the Sports Illustrated did a fabulous job of covering Muhammad Ali's career. they grew to love him after an early period when they were trying to figure out what he was all about. And then Sports Illustrated realized what a popular, controversial, and charismatic figure he was. I mean, I guess a lot of people realized that immediately, but Sports Illustrated realized that they could sell magazines based on that. And the people who collect the full run of Muhammad Ali covers will want this Jean-Pierre Coopman as well. I checked the population report from CGC. They're the grader of Sports Illustrated magazines and other magazines. And there's already one that has been graded at 9.2, which is quite a high grade on their 10-point scale, with almost no magazines ever being graded higher than 9.8, and magazines from this era rarely exceeding 9.2 or 9.4. So there's one at 9.2, there's one at 8.5. There's several that are in lower grades. There's 10 overall newsstand copies, which, as I've mentioned many times, are what collectors really want. And also 5 subscription copies have been submitted and graded by CGC. But at this point, there's not much market data. None of the higher grade copies have sold at public auction. And so we don't know really what this would bring at the marketplace, but it would be a top condition copy would bring a 3-figure amount, not 4 figures at this point. One of the interesting things about collecting a run of magazines, like all 50 Jordans or all 40 Alis, is the fact that sometimes the least appealing covers become the most valuable. Why is that? Because magazines are fundamentally different than trading cards in that the collectors decide how many they're going to buy at the newsstand. And the most significant Ali magazines following the Frazier fight in 75, which is titled The Epic Battle, or the Foreman Rumble in the Jungle. There must have been people who set those aside, even back then, not even thinking about necessarily future value, but just because it was a fabulous keepsake of one of the most important sports events of those years. There was nothing bigger than Muhammad Ali in the mid-70s.
Only thepit.com offers competitive buy now and sell now quotes on graded magazines online, as well as many of the most popular modern PSA graded rookie cards, including Shohei Ohtani, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Nikola Jokic, and Steph Curry. Trade sports stars like stocks at thepit.com. It was a preview in sneakers. This felt like an NBA Finals preview. And in crunch time, it was Phil Smith who stole the show. 2 huge offensive rebounds and jumper in the final minute that basically said, I'm taking this game over. The Warriors, defending champs, beat the Celtics. Mark, this looks like a preview's final. What happened?
It sure looks like a preview of the NBA Finals, except the Phoenix Suns had something to say. They would have upset the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. And so you would figure then the Celtics and Sun that'd be a much easier matchup for the Celtics to play the Suns and not the Warriors. But that Celtics Suns NBA final in '76 was one of the best NBA finals ever and had some of the best games ever. And Gar Hurd, our previous guest on the show, had a great moment in that NBA finals.
Yeah, and that famous triple overtime game that I think the Celtics ended up winning anyway.
Yes, they did.
But still, one of the most incredible games. The game was ruled over at one point, and then they had to put time back on the clock before Hurd hit that shot. And I didn't Phoenix purposely take a technical foul or something like that?
Yep.
It was bonkers. Yeah.
And also the refs got beaten up.
Yeah, the refs were accosted at that, to say the least.
To me, that was the last great NBA Finals before the Magic Bird era.
Right.
That's right.
Billy, Charlie Scott, tell me about him. He was having quite a season for the Celtics.
Yeah, but he came over when he came over from Phoenix. He was averaging 20 points. When he got to Boston, he was averaging 17. And John Havlicek made it clear he finally realized Charlie Scott wasn't happy getting the amount of shots that he got when he was with Phoenix. And he said that Charlie realized he would have to be the one to change, not us. And once he made that decision to change, Celtics went on a run and ended up winning the title. So I think it was, Charlie Scott's, a lot of Charlie Scott's doing the way he adjusted his game.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, that team still had Havlicek and Cowens
Yes.
and JoJo White, and they some really awesome players, and he needed to find where he fit, and once he did, they were good, quite good. Let's talk a little softball, shall we, Bill?
Softball? I don't know anything about softball. Sorry, that's Joe Creedy. Sorry, Joe, we're not talking softball. We're just easy questions.
This reminded me of those light beer commercials from back in the day. Yeah. Baseball's biggest stars took a break from contract squabbles for a light-hearted charity softball game in Boca Raton. And this was not just, hey, let's go have some fun. These guys wanted to win.
Yep.
Officially, the CBS All-American Softball Game, raising money for sickle cell research while playing like weekend hackers instead of all-stars. Even aces Tom Seaver and Jim Palmer tossed batting practice. Seaver blows a 6-run lead. The American League rallied to win 9-7. It had a who's who of future Hall of Famers playing in this game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, was it Boog Powell was there? What was the other guy? There was another real big name that was
Rod Carew.
Rod Carew, but putting their health on the line. It was just funny. I just thought today, if they would have that out there, let's say Shohei and Mookie Betts, what they need to sign? How many waivers would they need to sign? Agents involved, risk management committee. They'd never get those guys out there. Yeah. I mean, at least not to play as hard as these guys were playing.
Yeah, these guys were sliding and
yes,
doing everything to win. The way they used to play all-star games, to be quite honest.
Yep.
There's sorry, I'm getting all choked up over
I know, it's just a softball game, Mark. It's all
I'm sorry. There's a great picture of Steve Garvey with one of those rainbow umbrella hats on. It's just like the last image you would picture Steve Garvey wearing.
Yeah.
And Steve Garvey didn't look happy in that. He didn't look at his face in that. He looked sort of miserable, not the Garv that we always saw smiling,
Gunned down by the wrong Kiwi, John Walker and Filbert Baye are basically the two best milers on the planet. And even when politics and injuries kept messing up their head-to-head plans, you could feel the mutual respect. They generally want to race each other. But, Billy, someone else got in their way.
That was Mr. Rod Dixon, a New Zealander just like Johnny Walker. No one expected Dixon to even be in this race. He was a good runner, but he wasn't in the Baye conversation. But Baye took off early, like he always does, gets a lead. But Rod Dixon came at the end and beat him to win that little classic run they were in. What was it? What was the name of their place? What was the name of that run? It was the I didn't write the name of it.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Yeah, well, he won. But the thing is, you talk about Johnny Walker and Philip Baye. We've talked about Baye. I think wouldn't he be a guy we've been talking about for the past 2 years?
Yeah,
absolutely.
These guys are so good, Baye and Walker, that the other two best milers in the world, Rod Dixon and LeCurie, had to move to the 5,000 meters because of the fact they knew they couldn't beat him in the mile in the Olympics.
Yeah, they basically ran him out of their best race because they were always running for second.
Yes, I mean it's odd to think, because when you think of guys like Marty LeCurie, you go, that guy's one of the tops in the world, and he was, but they were just one step below Walker and Baye, and it wasn't like seconds. You're talking milliseconds behind these guys.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing about Dixon is he won the New York City Marathon in 1983.
Wow.
Wow.
And really? He finished 10th in the marathon in the 84 Summer Olympics.
We knew more about this is one of the articles when we talked about it, like, do we want to do this one? And now we all got so much information on it.
I know. And it's so amazing. It's so amazing that we all know who Filbert Baye is,
Yeah, and we know him real well. We know that he's a fast starter, likes to get out to the lead. It's fun now. And when we first started doing track and field, it was like, do we even care about this?
Right.
We're all like, yeah.
Getting his fill out of life. Back in 1960, Rocky Aoki was a scrappy ice cream hustler in Harlem, getting into street fights with cops over parking tickets. He went on to have quite a life, Billy.
Yeah, he did. He's the founder of Benihana. There's still 27 restaurants and growing, but it is owned by a different company nowadays because Aoki died a number of years back. The one thing I liked about Aoki is he wasn't afraid to stand up to anybody. I guess he was going to be part of the Thrilla in Manila with Don King, and King had said he wanted Aoki to back the fight. But then Aoki looked at Don King and said, if I do that, why do I need you? I'm a promoter. And they said Don King had nothing to say. So I like this Rocky Aoki. He didn't take guff from anybody.
No.
No, he was, and he was a musician. He and his some friends had a band called Rowdy Sounds, and his son Steve, I guess, is a musician known for like what's that music? Not EDM,
Rock and roll.
Yeah, like electronic music or something like that. And his daughter was a model and an actress. So.
That's right. That's right. I looked at that.
Yeah, he thought when it came to Benihana, he was betting that Americans would actually enjoy sitting with strangers and being entertained while they ate. And he was right, became a $25 million empire. He also started not only a restaurant chain, but a pornographic magazine by the name of Genesis.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, don't we?
So he was... there were no limits to Rocky's talents.
No.
And they say he was married 3 times, and he once said that he had 3 kids from 3 different women at exactly the same time.
Ah, nice.
That always goes over well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds
Honey,
like
I got to talk to you about something. Honey, I got to talk to you about it. Yeah, wow.
Who's the athlete who had like 10,000 kids?
Sean Kemp.
Yeah.
There was a defensive back.
That's right. There was another one too.
Cromartie.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Philip Rivers has 10 kids.
Antonio Cromartie, is that him?
That's it. That might be it. Yeah, yeah. Just keep shooting them out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Benihana. I don't think they shoot the food in your mouth anymore. Flick the food in your mouth anymore.
Oh gosh, I don't remember that.
You didn't think you'd sit at a table and you'd open your mouth and they'd be able to, they'd get it right in your mouth like a shrimp.
Oh yeah. No, now they throw the knives at you and you need.
Yes, that's much easier. And they just throw you on the grill if you.
The meal's free if you catch it.
Exactly. In your mouth.
Mark's bleeding.
Damn it, Mark. Now we have to pay for it.
Let's talk a little college hoops. A smile on the face of a tiger. Now we know everyone is playing for second place in this 1976 season because of those Indiana Hoosiers, but Missouri looks pretty tough with this guy by the name of Willie Smith. They're 22-3.
Yeah, he was averaged 24 points in his 2 years at Missouri. Willie Smith was a gunner.
Funny thing is, he was barely recruited out of junior college, still carried a little bit of a chip on his shoulder about the schools that passed on him. And, you can use that for motivation for a long time. In fact, I saw a quote the other day that from Steph Curry that after like his sophomore season, there were schools back then that were interested now in him. And he told his dad, Del Curry, F them. Like he was like, I'm not leaving now. These guys had no interest in me, which would be kind of interesting now in this transfer portal days about these guys. They just go for the highest bidder. But, you would think there'd be some guys that would be like, I'm not going to go play at Texas now. They wouldn't give me a sniff coming out of high school,
But that's what Fernando Mendoza did. He was from Miami. Miami wouldn't even give him a look.
Right.
He went to Cal, and he came back and not only won the national championship, but did it in Miami. So, hey, stick it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Mark, how did your Bruins do this week?
Do we have to talk about this? I remember this game against Oregon at Pauley Pavilion so well because I went to this game. So here are the Bruins. They have not. So I think they had only lost less than 10 times at Pauley Pavilion at that time. I mean, they were so rare. A couple games to USC, very rare. But not only did they lose to Oregon,
a 98-game home winning streak they've got going.
Not only that, but let me put it this way: the score at halftime was 30-14. It's like a football game. That's right. The Bruins had 14 points in the first half. They lost the game 65-45. It was just unheard of for a UCLA team to lose at home and to lose by 20 points anywhere. It was just crazy. And I sat through that whole game. I had great seats, though.
All that matters.
Yes, you could see up close them clanking shot after shot.
I'll shout out to my friend Mark Borson, who listens to the podcast at times, and his grandfather had season tickets, and we got to sit like parallel to the free throw line. Great seats, halfway up.
Hey, Billy, how about those running Rebels?
Well, I'm just going to say they scored 164 and 114 points in back-to-back games. Man, UNLV was running that score up. Not anymore, but now back in the day they were.
I used to love college basketball games that were high scoring.
Yeah.
If a game got like at halftime, one team had over 50 points, I was so into it. That's why I love Loyola Marymount
That's right. I was about to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, in 89-90. If I went to a game where Loyola Marymount scored, I want to say like 107 points in the game, and I was disappointed because I wanted 120. I wanted 130, which they've done. They did that year.
Yeah, they have regularly.
Yeah.
I mean, Paul West had, they pressed the whole game.
Yeah.
And, they're I think they wanted to have a shot up within 4 seconds of crossing, the front court. And then they just crashed the offensive boards. And, it helps when you've got Bo Kimball and Hank Gathers and they had some
Another guy.
Jeff Fryer, Terrell Lowry.
Right. Fryer could shoot. Yeah. They had a bunch of guys that could shoot. Purse Stumper, good team. Yeah.
And to think that Paul West he has an NBA title. I mean, it's sort of forgotten in the annals. He took over for Jack McKinney when the Lakers won the title their year with Magic.
All right, now we're going to talk a little squash. Billy, go.
Okay, when you hit that ball, you squash it, and then the other guy tries to come back and squash it. You squash him, you win.
And Mark, a little boating.
Well, no, I was going to say I never liked squash. I don't like it as a vegetable. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't do anything for me.
You're a vegan. You have to eat squash.
Yes, that's part of the.
There's
part of the contract.
Actually, that's one of the BYU you like.
I have a bunch of squash in my refrigerator right now.
So we're not going to talk squash. We're not going to talk boating. What about cycling? Guys, did you read this one?
No.
Oh my God!
I thought about it.
This was actually kind of interesting. The road to independence, what started as 4 college students biking from Alaska to South America, turned into the Bike Centennial, a full-on plan to let 10,000 people pedal across America for the bicentennial. The 4,250-mile route runs from Astoria, Oregon to Yorktown, Virginia, carefully mapped to avoid deserts, traffic, and endless cornfields. It goes through Yellowstone. I don't know. I read this. I thought of you, Billy. I thought that's something Bill back in the day would have really liked to do, bike across the country on the bicentennial. So
I'd love to do that. Yeah, I still want to do it now.
Yeah. All right. There goes Bill.
There's Scott, but what's happened to you? What's happened to you? You're right. You're reading bicycling, possums.
We haven't got to the possums yet.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, Scott, I'd go, Scott, you read it's too long. Now you're like, let me tell you about the intricacies of a possum.
Honestly, I read about a paragraph of everything, and if it doesn't grab my attention immediately, I move on. Unless, of course, it's what I consider a real sport, like bridge. Yes. His time has come, the moment we've all been waiting for at the PGBA International Possum Show in small town Alabama. Perfectly serious adults gather to debate the finer points of ear symmetry, tail hygiene, and overall possum character, as if they're judging the Westminster Dog Show instead of a nocturnal trash can eater. Yes, they are somewhat satirically looking at the possum, one of the most spookiest, gross animals that is out there. So,
and they truly do play possum.
Yes, I play possum many times.
No, they roll over and act like they're dead.
Yeah,
so have I.
Sorry, Scott,
my favorite possum story is that before my house burned down, we had, in fact, I want to say it was the original house, maybe, because I remodeled it like 10 years before it burned down. But anyway, The original house, we cut a cat door in to like where the den was, so the cats could go in and out. So one night I'm sitting in the den and I hear this noise, and I'm like going, okay, Fluffy, Tiger, whoever the cat was at the time, come on, just get in. And I still hear the noise, and then I realize the cats are inside. I'm going, what the hell? And I look, and there's this giant possum trying to get in through the cat door. And thank God he was so fat he could not get in, because that would have been a sight to see.
If he had gotten in, Mark would have gotten out.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I don't know who would have jumped higher, the cats or me.
All right.
They probably would have run from you, but you never know. They might have felt cornered.
You know, the raccoons will just stand up and box you, you know, but
The larger than life force behind it all is Basil Clark, founder of the Possum Growers and Breeders Association, who mixes humorous showmanship and genuine belief that possums could be a serious food source.
well, of course, you've had possum stew, right?
You
They
may
always
have.
had that on the
sister
Beverly
used to-
Hillbillies.
My sister used to date some interesting people when she was younger. Well, one day I come home and this boyfriend she got had caught a baby possum with his hand and put it in a box. If there was that thing, that's the scariest thing I've ever seen. He goes, go look in that big box over there. And there's a baby possum like the size of, a hand, just going crazy, hissing and clawing. I thought, oh, for the love of God. There's my possum story.
I feel bad for the little bastards.
I did too, but hey, if we ever get to raccoons, I have a much better raccoon story.
Okay, good. Keep that one.
Yes, that's in my back pocket
wraps.
for the raccoon story that eventually come up.
By the end, the fairgrounds empty out, the possums head home in cages, and you're left thinking that whether genius or gimmick, the whole thing runs on pure stubborn devotion to the humble possum. Yes.
So I know not Mark. Scott, would you eat possum?
I would not. No.
It tastes like chicken.
It's probably
For the record, Billy.
Okay. Now stay with me on this one. This is very, very interesting, dumb. Arthur Ashe beat Bob Lutz 6-2, 0-6, 6-3 to win the WCT in Rome. There were only 4 victories left in Ashe's career at that point. 2 were over Lutz, who had finished 0-5 in his career versus Ashe. But his final 6 wins, which I thought was weird, 3 were over Bob Lutz, 2 were over Brian Gottfried, and 1 was over Bernard Milton. So he only wanted to play guys at the end of his career with first names that began with the letter B.
Yeah.
See?
Not Bjorn Borg, though.
No, not Bjorn. That's right. That'd be another B. That's right. No.
Yes. And he was.
I go deep in these.
3-1 versus Bill Mahoney.
That's right.
You know what? If I had to grade you on this, I'd have to give you a B.
Thank you. I still love Rex Miller's interview with him talking about Ashe. Another guest on our show.
Yes.
Yep.
And speaking of B, Mark, let's talk a little bowling.
That's right. Dick Weber defeated Earl Anthony 216-210 to win $100,000 AM. It's a pro classic in Garden City, New York. It's his 25th victory on 17 years on the circuit. He becomes the first bowler to win $500,000, which I guess today would be chump change. But the reason that struck to me, I only knew 2 bowlers growing up. That was Dick Weber and Earl Anthony. I couldn't name you another bowler. To this day, I can't name you another bowler.
What's the guy from, what was it, with Bill Murray?
Oh, yeah, that's with the hand.
Can I ask you guys a dumb question? I'm not, would you guys rather be named Dick Pole or Dick Trickle? Sorry. Because you're saying, Dick Weber. I just,
I'm going to go with neither.
Neither. Okay. I don't know why that popped out. I guess because Mark was talking about.
I mean, obviously,
a lot of dicks.
50 years ago, Dick was short for Richard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And wasn't the poor choice of words, for lack of a phrase, that it is now, I think.
Yeah.
Now you don't meet too many little dicks.
Well,
that's Big Dick's kid.
There's Grady Dick. There's the basketball player Grady Dick.
There you go. I sure hope we beat someone by the name Dick in spring training.
I want to keep this in the podcast.
Are you Big Dick's son?
Hey, look, it's Little Dick.
We're a high echelon show.
Oh boy. Oh yeah, just to let you know, I may have to change my name
God.
because Callie told me there's no B in William.
That is true.
We had that
That's
argument
true.
the other day.
How
She goes,
did they-
I don't know why they call you Bill. There's no Bill in William. She goes,
Well-
did you make it up?
That's a point. How the hell did they get Bill
Yeah, I
as
didn't
a
get
shortened
that.
version of William?
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Well,
was
hey,
right.
Bill from Will makes a lot more sense than Dick from Richard.
I got. Well, maybe I'll do some research when I get time to find out how they got Dick from Richard.
Right?
Because there's no K in there,
Right.
no D in there. Well, there's a D at the end of Richard, but interesting.
No. It makes no
People,
sense.
real stories. Faces in the crowd.
Faces in the crowd. Mark, you go first.
Marvin Johnson is a sophomore at Howard College in Big Spring, Texas. He's the top junior college basketball scorer. The 6'5" forward is averaging 32.4 points a game. He's shooting 57% from the field, and he also leads the Hawks in rebounds with 11 per game. So what became of Marvin? Well, he ended up going, this was a junior college he played for. He ended up going to the University of New Mexico. So he was a Lobo from 76 to 78. And he was drafted in 1978 in the second round of the NBA draft by the Chicago Bulls. He was the 31st overall pick, though I don't think he played for the Bulls.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Billy?
Okay, Dave DeBolt. He's a sophomore for the Michigan hockey team. He scored 3 goals in 59 seconds versus Michigan Tech. And the thing is, Dave DeBolt didn't go away. He's still the single season points leader at University of Michigan. He also played 2 seasons in the NHL with the Hartford Whalers and was a teammate of Gordie Howe and his sons Mark and Marty. DeBolt was born in 1956. By then, Howe had already played 10 NHL seasons. Sort of cool to be able to, play with a guy like that that's obviously played 10 years when you're just a little baby.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and good player.
19th hole.
19th hole.
Where the readers
Mark.
take the shot.
Well, I've got a great, this to me is one of my favorite 19th holes of all time. And that is because there is a lady, actually it's a man, sorry, by the name of William Carsley from Chicago. And he says, I like to think of myself as a typical red-blooded American male. But lately I've been worried that something might be wrong with me. I got a bigger thrill out of your photo of our past guest, Sheila Young, skating to Olympic gold medal in speed skating than I did from your annual swimsuit pictures.
Yeah.
There you go.
That is a great little letter. That's the first letter in the 19th hole this week. I sent this letter to Sheila, and she got such a kick out of seeing this, which I thought was so funny, Bill, because the one thing she talked about was how much she didn't like the picture of herself on the cover of SI.
She looked amazing. She was rocking it, man. So it's funny. It is funny in our world, and as people, we see ourselves, you, me, Mark, everybody see ourselves much different than everybody else sees you. So when she was looking at herself, she probably saw any flaw that she thought she had. When I looked at her, I saw an amazing, attractive athlete that just was, and a kind person as well.
Yeah, and that's just, I thought it was just such a human element because that is so young girl thinking, oh, couldn't they have found a better picture?
And there would have never been a picture she would have given him.
Right.
Because she would have found something wrong in every picture.
Exactly.
And that's what a lot of us do, though.
All right, that's March 1st, 1976. Muhammad Ali on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He go on to make it 40 total, second only to Air Jordan. And honestly, we basically had a front row seat for much of it the last couple of years. Meanwhile, baseball's locking out. Hoops feels like a finals preview. And somewhere in Alabama, they're judging possums like it's Madison Square Garden. That's the beauty of this magazine. Heavyweights, heartbreak, and absolute chaos all in one issue. Thanks for hanging with Mark Hoffman, Bill Mahoney, and me, Scott Johnson. We'll see you next week because, as always, we are
past our prime.